In the 1960s and 70s, the French middle class lived a lifestyle that most of the world couldn't even imagine. Families spent weekends strolling through art shows, enjoying 4 weeks of mandated paid vacation, and thriving in a high-income, mass-consumption society. This lifestyle was fully funded by absolute dominance in global industrial manufacturing. French engineers and state-backed projects were pushing the very limits of technology, culminating in the Concorde, the fastest commercial airliner on Earth. They didn't stop there. French industries co-built Airbus, creating a sprawling aerospace pipeline that secured massive international orders and guaranteed high-paying jobs for virtually anyone willing to work. Between 1960 and 1980, the per capita income in France shot up by 12 times. They had built a seemingly invincible economic engine that delivered elite industrial output on the world stage and supreme worker comfort at home. But this line chart shows exactly where that dream ended. France's per capita GDP has essentially flatlined since 2008. In that same stagnant economy, youth unemployment has hovered at almost 20%. The financial decay has spilled directly into the streets. Swelling pension bills, shrinking tax revenues, and a severe cost of living crisis have led to violent clashes, with 1 in 3 French citizens reporting they can no longer afford 3 healthy meals a day. How does a nation with elite education systems, vast industrial infrastructure, and intense cultural dominance completely stall out? To find the answer, we have to look across the border. Over the last 50 years, Germany and France faced the exact same 3 global economic shocks. One nation survived by making difficult choices. The other made 3 fatal mistakes. The first shock arrived in 1973. When the Yom Kippur War broke out, oil-producing nations restricted supply in protest, driving the price of oil from $3 a barrel to $12 almost immediately. This 300% spike in energy costs slammed into Europe. The cost to power factories, transport goods, and heat homes skyrocketed, triggering massive inflation across the continent. France decided to shield its citizens from the math. They instituted the sliding scale of wages, a law that legally linked factory worker pay to inflation. If the price of bread and gas went up 10%, wages were forced up 10%. To fund this, the central bank recklessly expanded the money supply by 20% in a single year. Germany took a strictly disciplined approach. Workers agreed to accept a 6% pay raise despite 7% inflation. The government kept taxes stable, pushing businesses to invest those savings directly into upgrading their machinery rather than just padding paychecks. Let's apply this to a factory making a coffee machine. In France, legally mandated wage hikes pushed the production cost of that machine to $75. In Germany, wage restraint and new, highly efficient machines kept that exact same coffee maker at $65. When international retailers placed orders for 10,000 units, they bought the German product. By prioritizing the immediate comfort of its workers' wallets, France priced its own manufacturing sector out of the global market, collapsing into a trade deficit while Germany became an export superpower. The second shock hit in 1978, when Deng Xiaoping shifted China's strategy and opened its economy to the outside world. Foreign capital flooded into China. Thousands of factories were built to utilize vast pools of ultra-cheap labor, flooding the global market with products priced far below anything Europe could produce. For Germany, this was an existential threat. They responded by overhauling their labor market, cutting long-term unemployment benefits, and introducing part-time mini-jobs. It was a bitter pill, forcing healthy workers to accept low-paying roles, but it gave German factories the flexibility they needed to survive and stay in the country. France moved in the exact opposite direction. In the year 2000, the French government officially shortened the legal workweek from 39 hours down to 35, while legally requiring companies to keep worker pay exactly the same. They also made terminating an employee a massive financial risk. In Germany, a fired worker received a standardized, predictable severance. In France, a dismissed worker could sue in labor court, where a judge could force a small business to pay up to 4 years of salary for a single termination. This diverging bar chart tracks the fatal result of those labor policies. Fearing massive legal fines and high hourly costs, French businesses simply stopped hiring. Between 2000 and 2016, German industrial output grew by 25%, while French industrial output actually shrank, stripping manufacturing down to a fraction of its economy. The final blow came with the 2008 financial collapse. To prevent a depression, central banks slashed interest rates to near zero, flooding the world with incredibly cheap credit. Angela Merkel's government implemented a black zero policy. Germany strictly capped government spending and used the savings from these deeply discounted interest rates to aggressively pay down their existing national debt. France treated the cheap credit like public revenue. They borrowed heavily to fund unsustainable public handouts, spending 75 billion euros to cap citizen electricity bills, handing out immediate tax cuts to quell protests, and later covering nearly all private salaries during COVID. This borrowing spree was severely compounded by their pension system. In the early 2000s, France had over 2 active workers paying for every retiree. Today, as citizens continue retiring early, that ratio is plummeting toward a 1-to-1 balance, requiring constant debt issuance just to keep the system solvent. Today, France spends nearly 14% of its GDP on pensions, significantly more than its peers. Using cheap debt to fund daily public freebies creates a politically popular illusion of wealth, but it systematically hollows out the state's actual financial stability. Managing an economy is a lot like treating an injured athlete. Germany chose the grueling train of physical therapy. They let the citizens and the market feel the immediate discomfort, forced behavioral adjustments, and eventually recovered their strength. France took the painkillers. The pills mask the severity of the injury. They allow the athlete to keep running comfortably for a while. But eventually, the medication stops working, the debt threshold is reached, and the underlying structural rot is fully exposed. There is a constant tension in every democracy. Policies that make citizens comfortable today are frequently the exact opposite of the policies required to ensure a country survives tomorrow. Short-term economic comfort always carries a massive delayed invoice, and when the bill finally comes due, it is entirely paid by a shrinking middle class and a disenfranchised youth. When politicians promise painless solutions, artificial wage hikes, and endless government subsidies, they are purchasing immediate votes with the nation's long-term survival. Recognizing that trap is the only way to prevent your own economy from collapsing under the weight of its own comfort.